everyone, welcome to a new chapter of the Queen's Gambit, and now we're going to dive into the Chigorin Defense. So without further ado, let's get started. We saw the move order in the previous chapter, and now we're going to analyze the main line. Here we play knight c3, bishop b4. What I like about the main line is that white gets the bishop pair, and we know how powerful the bishop pair is, especially in open positions. So after bishop takes c3, here we play pawn takes. Bishop takes c3 is another line. However, I like taking with the side pawn, and now we've got a positional threat, which is playing c4 plus d5. And from this position onwards, we'll take a look at black's alternatives. So, we'll start off by analyzing e takes d4, which is probably the less efficient move. By black, the best move, in my opinion, is queen d6, because actually after queen d6, black is stopping c4 plus d5. And also here black keeps its position flexible. It can still take on d4, black can still play e4, knight f6 or knight e7. And speaking of knight f6 and knight e7, those are the other moves we also need to take a look at. So we'll see knight e7, knight f6, queen d6, and pawn takes d4. So we'll start off by analyzing pawn takes d4, and the game you'll find in the BGN files is Malanyuk against Petronijevic, and here of course we're going to take with the c3 pawn. We don't really want to take with the e pawn, because then I mean still should be alright for white, to be honest, but potentially we have hanging pawns. We cannot really play c4 now because d4 is always hanging. And also, if we take with the c pawn, we open up the c file, our bishop is now active, and as white we still can play, we can take control over the center, playing f3 and knight e2, knight c3. We've got several ideas here as white, and I think what we need to remember is the bishop pair and playing and controlling the center. So c takes d4. In this game, black plays knight to f6, and here white plays the flexible knight e2. This happens a lot in this line. White is always ready to play f3 in case black plays bishop g4. And there's another move we should always consider as well, which is queen b3. Because if we manage to trade queens off, then the pre-endgame is going to be great for white, because we can build up a strong center, and again, we've got the bishop pair. So in this game, white played knight e2, black castles, knight to f4. This is just great for white. The opening result couldn't be any better. Queen d6, bishop e2. I wonder if bishop d3 is better here. You think so? Bishop d3. We place the bishop on the open diagonal. We stop knight to e4. Perhaps white was concerned about black sacrificing here and playing rook e8. Maybe. I don't think that's working for black. We've got a solid position after bishop d3. We're just one move away from castling kingside. So, yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. With that said, bishop e2 is fine. We can always improve our bishop pair. We keep the kingside under control, and we've got a simple idea. We want to castle, and as soon as we castle, then black is in trouble, because well, what comes next is straightforward for white. We can play on the queen side, and also there's another plan we'll see often in positions like this, which is here. Okay, white castles. If black doesn't take on d2 now, then we can play something like bishop e1. We can hide the bishop there. We can play f3, and then the bishop comes back to life via f2, g3, or h4. On top of that, when we play f3, we can also try playing e4 next. So this is what happened in this game, and black played bishop f5, which I think it's a mistake, because it was the last chance for black to take on d2. But even if black takes on d2, his opening problems are not gone, because we can play queen takes, and our pawn structure is great. We've got more space. We are dominating on the c file. We can probably play rook b1 as well. I mean, it's all working for white here. We've got a lot of pressure on the queen side, whereas black has no targets. So it's a one-sided game on the queen side for white here. You can also think of maneuvers like knight d3, knight c5. So probably black didn't want to play like this. Instead, black went for an active approach. But we know how powerful the bishop pair is. So bishop e1. And all of a sudden, black has to move its pieces back. And this is what happens in this line. White's center becomes powerful. Now queen d7. Here it goes. e4. Black has to move the bishop back to g6. If bishop e6, then we play d5. And it's game over. That bishop is trapped. So bishop g6, d5. And I think here white has got a clear advantage. If you check this with Stockfish, you'll see that white is already winning. Stockfish says plus 2.1, which sounds a bit too much, but it probably, the reason for that is white's space and the fact black has no reaction here. We can play queen b3, rook c1, rook d1, and one day our pawns are going to advance even further. So it's good to see examples of how these lines play out in practice, because that's the best way we can see the ideas, white's ideas, in this line. So, after bishop takes, pawn takes, we can establish that taking on d4 by black is not good. Therefore, we are going to analyze black's main alternatives in this position, and we'll start off by analyzing knight to e7. This is a natural move by black, and as a rule of thumb, if black doesn't play queen d6 here, then as white I like playing c4 plus d5. Remember, that is our positional threat as white, to gain a lot of space and to build up a strong center. So black, by playing knight to e7, he's not really stopping c4 plus d5. So we'll play it, we'll play c4, black moves the queen back to d6, and here we play d5. So black usually goes knight b8, and I think that's the best move, because if black plays something like knight to d8, he's not losing anything, but the problem is that knight has no future. If he plays knight b8 instead, then the knight can improve via d7 and c5. At least that looks better for black's knight, and also it looks like a Nimzo or King's Indian approach by black, trying to close that position up in order to make the knight pair better than white's bishop's pair. So after d5, we are likely to face knight b8 in practice, and here we've got several approaches as white. I think we need to gain even more space and at some point our bishop pair should tell. I like the following example. The game you'll find in the PGN files as well for Taba against Wernert, and that game went e4. I think, as Stockfish points out, we can play knight e2 first. I really like this approach, and then we can play with knight c3 by leaving the e4 square empty by not playing e4 ourselves. Now we've got the threat of knight b5. We might play something like knight e4. On top of that, bishop d3 is also on the table, and I really like our position. I feel we'll end up playing e4 sooner or later, but there's no rush. There's no rush to play it. And we can use the same ideas we're about to see in the main line. So let's see how this game played out. White played e4, castles, knight to e2. We always see this knight e2 sooner or later. I feel white has to be as flexible as possible. We might play knight c3, we might play knight g3, but what we know is we're not playing knight f3, which in this position, to be fair, should be okay. I don't mind playing knight f3 here because the pin is not really annoying, and if black played something like this, I can always play bishop e2, or I can also go for kingside attack. Remember, we've got the bishop pair, so getting a lot of space should be fine. Knight d7, castle here. Just play a random move as black to show my idea. I can play knight e1 and knight d3. This is what white does against the king's Indian. I know this is not a king's Indian, but plans are basically the same. We can trade off our worst bishop, we can get black's good bishop, and now we're left with bishop d2, which is good. Our knight heads towards d3, from where we are going to be supporting a queenside pawn storm, and also, if we absolutely have to, we can play f4 as well. And who knows, we might end up attacking on the king side as well. So this position is great from that positional point of view for white. So even knight f3 is playable. What we need to understand here is that black doesn't have the bishop pair. Black wants to play something like this. It looks nice for black, yes, but it's also risky for black to open up that position a lot because, again, we've got the bishop pair. At some point, that's going to be a big part of the game for white. So we're actually expecting black playing something like f5, and as soon as that position opens up, then we'll have our chance as white. If that position remains closed, then we can play and keep on improving our pieces. At some point we can do something on the queen side as well, or as we just saw, we can also play this plan with bishop e2, knight f3, knight d3, and then if black stays still, then we are the ones trying to open that position up by playing c5 or f4. I think that knight going to d3 is great. Is a great part of white's strategy in this line. And I know this idea from the King's Indian, not really from the Chigorin, but that's the advantage of knowing a lot of openings. You can always steal ideas from one opening to use it in another one. So coming back to the game, white decided to play knight e2, black plays knight to a6, knight c3, good. Black here decided to play f5, fine. We can just ignore black's kingside moves and the castle, and here I like bishop e2 because if we play bishop d3, then we give black a reason to play knight c5, winning a tempo. So bishop e2. Here black plays queen g6. We're about to see black's idea in this line. White castles. As you can see, if black takes on e4, we couldn't care less because those pawns are not good. In fact, we'll end up taking that pawn on e4 sooner or later. And if black takes on e4, he's basically killing his own attack. What black wants to do in these lines is f4. Now, by closing up the king side, black has a lot of freedom to play there. And as it usually happens in the King's Indian defense, black is going to try something like g5, maybe a rook lift on the king side. However, there's a huge difference between the King's Indian and this position. And the main difference is we can attack on the queen side as well. And don't get me wrong, that happens on the King's Indian too. But the main difference is that here, black's center is not stable, it's not closed. We can easily open that position up as white. And on top of that, and I know I've said this a few times already, but those bishops are also going to make a difference. So I really like how white played in this game. This opening aside, I think this is a great example of strategy. White plays king h1, knight c5, f3. As white, we're closing that position up on the king side, and black is probably happy about. He's happy to see this move. However, white has a great idea. Queen e1. I really like this move too. Just in case, we keep an eye on the king side. We can play queen f2 as well. The way I look at this position is, as soon as we stop black's counterplay on the king side, then queen side wise is lost, because we've got knight b5, we've got bishop b4, eventually we'll end up playing c5 and d6. There's not much black can do to stop all of those things. So if we've got the king side under control, then I would say black is lost on the queen side, at least from a strategical point of view. So let's see how this game was. Okay, black played b6. Another great move by white, rook to g1. This is another idea we can see in the King's Indian, the main line of the King's Indian. White is playing this ridiculous idea of playing king here and rook g1. It doesn't look great. However, this is the best way of stopping black's kingside attack. And we'll end up playing g3 one day. And believe it or not, we are the ones attacking on the king side too. If we open up that position, the g file and our bishop pair, that's going to be painful for black. I also see that black's knight on c5 looks beautiful, but it's not doing much at the moment. Can go to d3, can go to b3 either. If black wants to reposition this knight, it's going to take ages to do so. So rook f6 is what black played. And here, after rook f6, clearly black has a threat, which is playing rook h6. If we don't pay attention, there's another threat which is even bigger, which is queen takes pawn. Let us say we play something like a3. Sorry about the mouse clip, by the way. He can take, rook takes, rook here. That is a checkmate. Alright, we've got queen h4. That is a checkmate. So we need to be careful as white. And that is the reason why in this game white played g3. According to Stockfish, g4 is also possible. And again, as soon as we stop black's ideas on the king side, then we can focus on queen side play. the game was quite interesting. I strongly recommend you study the whole game. White played g3, and it feels like black is running out of ideas here. However, black found knight d3, which is quite interesting, of course. If we take, then queen takes f3 check, and he gets the piece back. He also manages to win a pawn. So here white found another great move, in between move, g4. It's a double threat as well. If he takes our queen now, we'll take on h5, and that knight on e1, well, it's not trapped, but it is at risk. I wouldn't say that knight on c2 is safe, and I feel without queens, black's position is not stable. Not to mention that pawn on e5 is about to be taken, and again, without queens, we've got the singing voice on the queen side. So I know we're analyzing middle game stuff now, but I really want to show what happened in this game, because I think it is related to the opening plans. Black played queen h3. Again, if we take, then queen takes, f3 check. So white plays queen f1, takes, bishop takes, black goes back to c5. And I think from this position onwards, what we're about to see is just a positional masterclass. White has a lot of space on the king side, no kingside attack for black whatsoever. If we need to protect that pawn, we can always play bishop e1. And with all of this space we've got, then we can focus on the queen side. Again, it might take us a while, but sooner or later we're going to find advantages on the queen side, because the bishop pair is good, because we've got a lot of space, and we also got ways to open up that position even further, even on the king side. Again, with the bishop pair, there's a lot of stuff we can do. So check this game out. You'll find it in the PGN files, and these are the positions we're looking for when we play against the Chigorin. Queen-less positions where our two bishops are a huge advantage, especially in endgames or pre-endgames. So, quite a complex line. As you can see, there are other ways we can play as white too. If you don't like the resulting positions of this line, you can look up, other games, and I'm sure you'll find alternatives for white. I know knight e2 without playing e4 is great, as pointed out before. There's a move we'll see in this course as well, which is queen b1. Not in this position though, but we'll see queen b1 being played in similar structures where after queen b1 we put an eye on b4, but also we put an eye on that diagonal as well. So this approach is interesting. So I think at the end of the day, what really matters is knowing the ideas, and then depending on the plans you want to play, then you choose your moves. So in this knight to e7 line, I don't mind playing queen b1, I don't mind playing knight f3, and I don't mind playing with knight e2, knight c3. e4 is what we just saw, and for that line, I don't mind playing that either. I feel this is all about understanding that position. It's not by, it doesn't depend on analyzing it move by move. So, alright, I think now we can move on to another line. In order to do so, we need to go to the next game. Let me see if I can find it on the BGN files. So here we've got Smirin against Vallejo pawns. Let's take a look at that. And this is the game where we'll find Queen B1, the Queen B1 I just mentioned. And as you can see, this game started off as in English, and soon we'll transpose into the Chigorin. Okay, bishop b4, bishop d2, takes, pawn takes, and here black plays knight to f6. I think this is better than knight to e7, because the knight goes towards the center, and also black here keeps an eye on e4. And it's not only about playing knight e4, it's about playing e4 as well, because as we're about to find out, white is playing f3 here. We need to play f3 in this position, because otherwise black has too many threats. They might not be winning, but they are annoying, and f3 is part of our strategy. We need to get bishop f1 out, and then we need to play knight e2. Of course, we would love to do it here, but then he takes the pawn on g2. So that is the reason why we play f3. There's, of course, the other option, which we know is playing c4 plus d5. This is playable too, by the way. The reason why I don't play it here as white is because now black, he can still play knight b8, knight d7, and then knight c5. He can also consider knight to e7, and then he can drive the knight towards the king side. Still complex game. I'm not saying this is winning for black, but against knight f6, I like this f3 approach, and we still got the c4, d5 ideas, or now we can try e4 plus d5 as well. I feel that after f3, black should move the queen away from d5. In fact, queen d6 is one of the moves here as black, and the other move, as we'll see in this game, is playing e4. So, from this position onwards, just to make things easier for us, if black castles, if black plays a natural move, then we can consider playing an aggressive approach, going for e4, d5, or, as we know, the endgames, and I think this is the approach I would play, we would play queen b3 here. And if we manage to trade queens off, then it's just great news for white, really. We cannot get a better position out of this opening than this one. Great pawn structure, our pawns keep on moving, bishop pair, great center. I think this speaks for itself. And if black moves the queen away, then we just got a free development move, and we can just carry on with our plan. So this is the main position, and now we'll mention both queen d6 and e4. You can tell both moves are playing against white's ideas. So let's start off by analyzing queen d6. After queen d6, I think we need to remember white's plan here. We're not going to play queen b3 now because we're not trading queens off after that. The reason for queen b3 is to trade queens off. So instead, what we can do here is we can get the bishop out and play knight e2, knight g3. That is the plan. And in some games, I see white play knight e2 first, which also makes a lot of sense. Then we can play knight to g3, and then we play bishop d3. So that is white's plan in this line. Against queen d6, I think bishop d3 is just fine. I don't see any tactics for black here. I don't see e4 working. So black is likely to castle. We play knight to e2. Black can play rook e8. And here we castle. Now we've got a position we'll see a lot in these structures. Our king is safe, the knight's on e2. This setup is really nice because one day e4 is going to happen. If black stops that by playing e4 himself, here we've got two good ideas as white. One of them is ignoring black's last move. I mean, not taking on e4 and playing bishop c2 and trying to play knight g3. And if black takes, then we can take with the pawn. This is great for us. Our pawns are just too powerful, and black's kingside attack is not good. Just after a few moves, his kingside attack is over, and again, there's nothing stopping our pawns from advancing. So this is a great idea for white. We're just waiting till that position gets open, and then we know these two guys here are going to do the rest. And if we want to do something different, I think we can take here. I think that's fine too, because after all, we open up the F file. You can even consider taking and playing knight g3. I think the reason I would play this here is because we managed to play e4, and again, it's all about initiative and space. We don't have the bishop pair, we do have a lot of attack, and we've got the strongest center. So what ends up happening in lines like this is that, as I was saying, at some point white plays e4. We can play with knight g3 as well. We're going to see some plans where white plays bishop e1 and bishop f2 just to solidify the center even further, and then e4. We've got a lot of ideas in this line. Before I forget this, there's another move, and just trying to mention all of the things I know about this line because I might forget some plans here. Queen c1 is also worth considering, and let me just show you an example. Let us say black plays a random move like in h8, then queen c1. The idea is simple. We want to play bishop e1, we need to keep an eye on e3. Now that e3 is protected, then we can safely play bishop e1 and bishop f2 or bishop g3, even bishop here, depending on what black plays. Again, it's a matter of time, but sooner or later our pawns are going to advance, and then black is in trouble. That center is just too powerful, and our dark square's domination is powerful too. So those are the plans. And before we finish this chapter, let's see what happened in this game between Smirin against Vallejo, another game you can find on the BGN files, of course. Black played e4. I like it. I like the approach by black because he's trying to play active. He's playing an active approach on the king side, trying to make our life difficult as white. And here's where I like queen b3. Again, we're going for the queen trade. We are not taking on e4 now because the resulting pawn structure is not great for us. We can see that bishop on d2 is not great either. And the same goes for f4. Despite being interesting, despite white having the chance of playing c4 later, I think my bishop on d2 is not great. So we can keep the tension in the center now, and we can play queen b3. If you look on the BGN files, you'll also find c4. And after queen d6, you can find this queen b1. Again, this move is showing up. It's a move that happens quite often in these lines. We attack the pawn on e4. We're telling black, hey, make a move here. Decide whether you want to take on f3 or not. And if he doesn't, then we can just keep our plan. We can keep on executing our ideas. at some point he's going to take on f3, and then we'll have to decide whether to take with the knight, or if our knight's on e2 already, we can take with the pawn, and then we'll have that massive center, and that is supposed to be good for us. So we'll explore all of these lines in the next chapter, but just a heads up, queen b3 is the move white played, and at some point, if black doesn't trade queens off, then our plan is going to be related to that pawn on e4. We need to get rid of that pawn, and if we can get our center moving, then we'll have a big advantage as white. So that's just a heads up. We're going to analyze this game in the next chapter. This chapter, we're going to finish it here. I think we saw a lot of concepts already for this one. So that's it for this lesson. I hope you found this useful. I hope you could learn something. And of course, I want to see you guys in the next one. Thank you.